You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is Michael Katz from the Northeast Mississippi Tupelo Daily Journal, and we are here to talk about Ole Miss football. We are going to be in that prime time spot, that 7 o'clock Friday spot, because Tom, get well soon. He had a heart attack during the week, the mayor of the quarantine. He's okay. He's okay. They caught it in time and put a stent in, but he is not obviously going to be doing a video this week. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, sorry to hit you with that news right off at the beginning, Michael, but how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, and my best goes out to him and his family. That's I did see that on Twitter, and it's a good thing they caught it when they did. Yeah, it's one of those things, and he's been on Twitter and like in the DMs just tweeting up a storm. So he's obviously bored in the hospital, but it seems like he's doing well. It seems like he's more worried about Ole Miss and Georgia than he is about what's going on in the hospital. And I mean, take that for what it's worth. There's just a different feeling around this game. I'm going to bring this up. FanDuel does all the betting line sponsors for Locked On, and on FanDuel, Georgia has been a 2.5 point favorite the entire week. It hadn't moved at all. The over-under hadn't moved. Nothing's moved. But if you look at these stats on underlying everything, 90% of the money is on Georgia, which means that 2.5 point line, if it was a normal line, would be up at 6 or 7 points by now. But they're leaving it exactly where it is, begging for more Georgia bets. Do they know something? What do they know, Michael? I don't know what Vegas ever knows, but that's beyond my pay grade. But I do think this has all the makings of a really. I'll put it this way: I don't think we're going to have a 52-17 game this year.
No,
that does not feel like it's in the cards.
No, it feels like I think Vegas thinks that Ole Miss might win this game.
Yeah,
and they're just going to rake it all in, because for people that don't know, they're like, what are they talking about? At 90% of the money, if Georgia wins, Vegas loses a bunch of money. And there's a lot of fancy buildings, bright lights, and spheres in Las Vegas, and they are known for not losing money. So this doesn't happen very often. So that's the reason it is kind of a storyline of what's going on. But it's just a different feel around this game. This is a legacy game for Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart is likely going to leave Ole Miss as the single game passing leader, the single game total offense leader, the season passing leader, the season total offense leader, career as well. Career passing yards, he's already the career total offense leader, and he's also the winningest quarterback that has ever played at Ole Miss. So all he is lacking is that program-defining win. He needs to win in a game like this Georgia game to where he enters that statue realm. And I think that's all that's left for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, you think about moments. That's how I think about college football. I think of moments, and like, can I place a guy in a certain game that makes me think, oh yeah, I remember that one. Listen, he's put up every number you could possibly want. The wins, the numbers speak for themselves. But when he said we have to win out, and you can and you win this game, I think you've put yourself in pretty rarefied air, just given the circumstances, given everything at stake, given everything being on the brink of falling apart at that point. If you come through, and I'm going to be honest, I think Jaxson has to have a Heisman-ish sort of game for Ole Miss to win. That just seems like he's going to have to play as well as he's played. And if you play well in those big games, people remember you. He's been a great quarterback. There's no question about that. But a win like this to, quote unquote, save the season and keep the playoffs alive. I mean, that would be that's what they remember you for.
Yeah, nobody's talking about this yet. No, this is not going around. Well, they've mentioned that it happened, but they haven't quite put this together yet. So I'm going to break this down for everybody. If Ole Miss beats Georgia and is able to win out and goes to the playoff, what happened in that post-game press conference at LSU is going to be the equivalent of Tebow crying.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Yeah, that's and again, that's going to be one of the moments that you remember from this.
And that's going to be a defining thing. And hey, Tebow's made a living off of that moment after that Ole Miss game, that post-game press conference. Half of his reputation came after that. And so it's a big moment for Jaxson Dart. You know, this is a fun game because after that 52-17 game a year ago, Ole Miss went out and got Walter Nolan, Princely and Monmiel. They've done a lot of work in the transfer portal on both the offensive and defensive line and linebacker as well, if you want to count Chris Pupal. But this is because of what Georgia did in that 52-17 game. That was the measuring stick game. It was like, we've got to go out and do this so we can beat them. Is Saturday where we find out if Ole Miss spent their money right or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Everything in the offseason that happened was because of that game. I mean, you can really sort of point to that. Obviously, the Alabama game earlier in the season, but the 52-17 really seemed like a sort of a gut check of what do we have to do to get better, to get to the level that the Georgias are at. And yeah, I mean, what better chance to show it than against the team that made you do the things you did?
Yeah. But the good news for Ole Miss is Brock Bowers is not coming through the tunnel. Ladd McConkey is not coming through the tunnel. There's a chance that there's going to be rain. And I'm going to be honest, Michael. Rain, I would take Jaxson Dart. I've seen Jaxson Dart, that 2022 game against Mississippi State where he played in a monsoon and he was 30 or 40. I've seen that. That's proof of concept. And then you have a Carson Beck that has thrown 10 interceptions in the last 3 or 4 games. I think you would trust Jaxson in that scenario. We're going to get to pass to victory in the second segment, but who do you think rain would truly benefit in this situation? Because I think the forecast is getting better, but it's still rainy forecast.
Yeah, I mean, I think given from like what we have seen, especially this year, you trust Jaxson more in those situations. Carson Beck is, I think he's still a really good player. I think he's better than what his numbers have shown, but the numbers don't lie. He has turned the ball over at a fairly alarming rate, and you can't, I can't imagine that bad weather on the road would make that much better. And, they again, like you said, they don't have those reliable guys this year, like Bowers and Ladd McConkey. Obviously, depending on the injury report and who plays, Jaxson Dart has a lot of guys that he trusts, and he has rapport with a lot of guys that I think if the weather was bad, I don't think it would really phase them that much. Like they've all worked together so much that I don't think it would be something that would really get in the way of their success.
Yeah, and also if it does get rain, it does get soggy. It's harder to rush the passer when it's soggy. So that's advantage Ole Miss offensive line in that scenario, and probably advantage Jaxson Dart as well. Now, I'm just thinking of different ways that could happen. Anyway, thank you for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. When we come back, we're going to look at paths to victory, get Michael's prediction in this pre-game show. So stick around for that. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the best professionals for the role, right? That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They've got the tools to help you find the right candidates for your team faster and for free. From my own experience, when I was hiring for my team, I knew how important it was to have quality candidates lined up. With LinkedIn Jobs, I was able to find top-notch professionals quickly, which saved me so much time. Their platform made it easy to sift through all the candidates and find that perfect fit. And what sets them apart? It's not just a job board. It connects you with professionals you cannot find anywhere else. Many of them might not be actively searching for a job, but they're open for the right opportunity if it comes along. In fact, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not searching on LinkedIn, you're kind of missing out. Plus, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. So ready to make the right hire? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up that financial favor of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal rate of 4.5 APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for the any net worth. These generous benefits are now available only for $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply, product specific disclosures. Visit robinhood.com/gold. Remember, investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, so we're looking at pathways to victory with Michael Katz of the Northeast Mississippi Tupelo Daily Journal. And it's a situation, you got the weather, you've got a whole bunch of different variables, but this is the facts as I see it. If Georgia comes into Oxford and plays at their absolute best, there's nothing you can do. You can play really well and lose, but there's nothing you can do in that scenario. So you have to figure out a way to make them not play their best. You've got the weather, that's a perk in your corner. You've got Carson Beck and his turnover problems and his confidence. That's a perk in your corner. So what do you think are the paths to victory for Ole Miss in this game?
I really think that getting out ahead early, the early lead, I think is going to be really big, because the faster you can force them to throw the ball and make them one-dimensional, I think the more opportunity you're going to have for turnovers. And that's been Carson Beck's, problem this year. I also think, though, that if Georgia does get up ahead early, I don't think they can have the, oh, here we go again type mentality. This is a team that, this is not the same Georgia team from the last few years. It's a very, very, very good Georgia team. Again, they have maybe the best win in college football this year with that win at Texas. That was a absolute clinic. That was as impressive as it gets. And, they were down 28-0 against Alabama and still almost came back to win, took a lead late. So when Georgia wants to be the best team in the country, they're the best team in the country. But I think the sooner you can throw them off the things they want to do. And this isn't one of Kirby Smart's best running teams, which I think is probably a good thing for Ole Miss. I think they ran for 300 yards against Ole Miss last year, 5 touchdowns, something like that. The sooner you can take it away completely and make them one-dimensional, I think Ole Miss, when you can let the pass rushers do their thing, again, 18 sacks the last 2 games, they've got the most in the country by, I think they got 41, whatever it is. The sooner you can let the pass rushers do their thing, I think the better spot you're in. And, against LSU, it was weird to see them not get a single sack. And obviously part of that is because of that great offensive line at LSU. Georgia's got
because they were being held every play, and it wasn't.
Well, and Georgia's got a good offensive line as well. But Lane talked about a little bit after that game that they did a little bit more dropping into coverage because of who Nussmeier is and the way that he can pick apart a defense. You would have to think that after seeing what happened the last time, you got to stick with what you do. You just got to, if you're good at getting after the quarterback, just get after the quarterback.
Yeah. It seems like that would be the apt way to go. I mean, you're number 1 in the country in sacks, number 1 in tackles for loss. You should be doing whatever you can do to create sacks and tackles for loss, because apparently that is what you do well. Now, the other key is whenever you get a chance to make an interception against Carson Beck, you make it. You don't let the ball hit the ground. You don't do things like that. Whenever against Arkansas, when it looked like Arkansas might come back and make that little bit interesting towards in the second quarter before it all fell apart, Chris Pupal dropped an interception that would have been a clear put away thing. That's a play against Georgia you got to make. It wasn't a play against Arkansas that you had to make, but against Georgia, you'd have to make that play.
Yeah. I mean, you can't let opportunities like that go to waste. Georgia is too good. If you don't make them pay, they're going to get back on track and do what they do.
This is an absolutely massive game. Have you seen what Oxford, I guess we're recording this on a Thursday. Have you seen the uptick in the number of people? Is there signs of a super busy weekend? What are we looking at?
So I have been fairly reclusive the last couple of days, but I'm going out, going to go get dinner with my sister tonight, so I should have a little bit of a better feel. But from what I heard, people were anticipating it starting to get crowded today, which is not surprising, given it's the Grove. People get excited. People want to be in Oxford early. Also an early game. You want to get as much time in town as you can. But I think that you're going to probably see some of the square, I think, is going to be It's always busy on a Thursday because of college, but I think you're going to see a lot of those restaurants filled up earlier than normal.
All right, Michael, give me a score prediction for this game. How do you see it ended up?
I'm hovering towards like a 31-27 Georgia. And I say that because I have seen Georgia win these sorts of games a lot over the last few years. They have the history of doing this. We haven't seen Ole Miss win this sort of game quite yet. They've won big games. The LSU game last year was huge. The Penn State, the Peach Bowl, that was huge. But this one is just the gravity of it is just a little bit different. And this is a little bit higher caliber than those teams. I just haven't seen them do it. It doesn't mean they can't do it or they won't do it. I think it's going to be a really, really close game. But until I've seen them do it, it's hard to pick against Georgia.
Yeah. One game that I talked about how I thought the game was going to go and how I expected Georgia to play. I actually used the Missouri game a year ago, and Georgia ended up winning that game. As ugly as they played, and Missouri kind of controlled it, but Georgia ended up winning that game. Another game that I think, hearing your score kind of made me think of it, is the 2022 Ole Miss Alabama game. There's a lot. That's what jarred my memory whenever you said that score.
Yeah, no, I thought about that game, and that one feels like it could have the same sort of swings and emotional things. It's again, I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a game where Ole Miss has an opportunity to win late. It's just a matter of, are they going to make the plays this time? And if I knew the answers, I wouldn't be doing this for a living. I'd be in Vegas with our friends, making money at DraftKings. But I really do think that this is going to be a really, really, really good game. And if the past is an indicator of the future in the present, it's hard to pick against Georgia. Not saying it won't happen, but just Georgia seems like a game that Georgia has an edge in.
All right, before we get out of here, just go ahead and describe to everybody what the Ole Miss run game is going to look like.
Well, I can tell you who won't be there. Henry Parrish will not be there. That injury looked pretty gruesome.
Yeah, that was gnarly on TV.
Yeah, and he ended up getting carted to the halftime locker room, so that's never a good sign. And Lane Kiffin likes to play it pretty coy, but when he says out, that usually means that it's pretty bad. Dominique Thomas, he was a factor last week. I don't know what that looks like in a game like this. Maybe this is another Ulysses Bentley game. Who knows? It's like
they listed Rashad Amos as probable, and it would absolutely surprise no one. It surprised everybody in the Ole Miss fan base, but nobody probably that knows who Rashad Amos is if he performed relatively well against Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to know who they are going to go to on a game by game basis. That has been among the weirder things to follow this year is who is going to be the guy in a given game. I really have no idea.
See, the Tigers do this thing they call pitching chaos. They have Tarek Skubal and then pitching chaos to where you just never know. They just throw bullpen arms all the time. That's kind of what the Ole Miss running back options are right now. It's just running back room chaos at this point.
Yeah. And you hope that the offensive line does its job, that it doesn't really matter who's in there. But yeah, and maybe this is a game where Jaxson runs a little bit more. Who knows? I think he was a leading rusher last week with it was only 47 yards or something. But maybe he gets involved in the run game. He's never afraid to lower his shoulders or not run out of bounds. So that is going to be very interesting to see how their run game looks.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Michael Katz, Northeast Mississippi Tupelo Daily Journal. Michael, what do you got going on at the Daily Journal?
So I had a big piece on the aforementioned Pooh Paul run today. Just a super interesting kid with a really cool backstory. Just among the most pleasant people you will probably ever meet, and his family is the same way. So that was a big one that ran today. One of my, brevity is not my strong suit when it comes to features, and this probably qualifies under ones that were a little lengthy. But I think it's with how well he has played this year and the impact he's had, I thought it was really cool to sort of explore, how he got here and kind of what makes him tick. So that was the big one for this week. Other than that, we're going to have a lot of coverage, during the game, after the game, probably some columns coming into the bye week. And it's never lacking for content when you cover Ole Miss.
Yeah, and next week we'll get to talk a little bit about college basketball. So
yes,
that's pretty good. So it's a bye week, and Lane Kiffin's not going to Florida. Everybody, he's not going to Florida.
I saw that tweet this morning, and I was just like, "Not today, old friend." we dodged another one.
Anyway, thank you, Michael, very much, and safe travels, bud.
Thanks, man.